Welcome back. Namibia will host this year's World Press Freedom Day under the theme Information as a Public Good. This serves as a call to affirm the importance of cherishing information as a public good and exploring what can be done in the production, distribution, and reception of content to strengthen journalism. I'm now joined by the editor of Namibian Sun, Toivo Ndjebela, to tell us about this and more. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning, Denver. Thank you for having me, man.
First things first, as a journalist, as an editor, as a Namibian, what does it mean for the Windhoek Declaration to return to its maternity ward and for the Land of the Brave to be hosting this year's World Press Freedom Day celebrations?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Denver, again. And I like the way you put it, the maternity ward. It's homecoming, really, for this event this year. Yesterday I was addressing a meeting, Zoom meeting, co-chaired by the Namibia High Commissioner to the UK, Linda Scott, with other ambassadors from New Zealand and other countries. And we were talking about, subscribing to the ethos of press freedom as Commonwealth countries. And of course, like I was saying yesterday to them, the Windhoek Declaration started a series of events, a series of campaigns to eventually leading the United Nations General Assembly to adopt the 3rd of May as Press Freedom Day. So the fact that this whole movement, this whole campaign started in Namibia, in Africa, by African newspaper journalists, nobody can really take that away from us, and we're so proud. And a lot has happened in shaping the narrative around press freedom as a result of that campaign. So it's a good thing.
Very well. Speaking about a good thing, this year's theme is information as a public good. Help us understand exactly what that means. And once we've understood that, do you concur with that notion that information is indeed a public good?
Yeah, maybe I might just start with your last question. Information is a public good, but only if it's used to actually empower people, empower communities. We shouldn't read newspapers or watch televisions or listen to radio just to pass time. It's really to say to ourselves, what is it that I've learned today? What decisions am I making today, good decisions for my life and for my community based on what I've consumed in terms of information? And, people talk about edutainment, education, information, and what is the other one? The three tenets of that.
Entertainment.
And entertainment, exactly. So it's beyond just entertainment and information being informed. It's to say, if you are going to vote, what are you basing your vote on? Is it just on some abstract notion, or is it because you are well informed and are actually aware of what that tick or cross would actually, or the kind of impact it will have going forward? Yes.
So together with Madame Gwen Lister, you've also been chosen to be one of the champions of this year's World Press Freedom Day celebrations. What does the role of champion in this particular regard entail?
Yeah, so the champions, are to do exactly what we are doing right now, is to clear as much air as possible, is to create a lot of awareness, is to speak to as many stakeholders as possible, like the meeting I had yesterday with the international high commissioners and ambassadors, is to create that kind of awareness and create hype around the event. Ahead of 3rd May, there's so many questions that are being asked. What is this thing about? What will happen? What will be the outcome of that meeting and whatnot? So our job is sort of to create a sense of clarity around the event and just to publicize it. So we are essentially the spokespeople of the event.
Very well. Namibia is a beautiful but a very small country, and journalists ultimately are also human beings. And there could be bias at play intermittently, potentially even conflict of interest, which goes against the code of conduct. As an editor, how do you see to it that your team members don't involve themselves in potential conflicts of interest? And if there is a bias, which there could be, that you deal with that appropriately?
Yeah, so then what we do is at this level is to agitate to our reporters. Every morning we have a diary session in the morning where we emphasize every morning that if you find yourself in a situation where you feel conflicted because you are former lovers with this person that you're writing about, or they are your former employees or employers, or you used to work for them and you left under a crowd of disharmony and therefore you want to use this platform to hit back, it's not going to be allowed. So it's something that we cannot preach enough, but the longer you agitate about it, the quicker it get internalized by the colleagues to ensure that really they step aside, because there's nothing more unprofessional than being conflicted and somehow you just hide that. So we are not here to drive anyone's agenda. We must look at facts as they are. Sometimes, you know, as editors, things get placed on our desk and then you look around your team and say, who's the best guy to tackle this? Who's the least conflicted person in this situation? And then you assign.
Is it possible to be truly objective?
It's a good question. No, it's not possible to be 100% objective, because we have, for example, if something is not going right in the country, and maybe I write about it on Twitter that this is not correct, or Facebook, this is not correct, because people somehow expect that if you're a journalist, just observe and keep quiet. But the country is for all of us. So if I then end up writing the story and they say, oh, but this guy actually even expressed an opinion on this thing, so maybe he approached this story with a subjective mind. That could be true. But, and I mean, I was saying, for example, and maybe this is not the platform to make this kind of example, but I'll make it anyways. So, for example, people were talking about Job Mpanda, how he seemed to look away in some situations of corruption and only focus on others. And I'm saying, he's a human being. I'm not here to speak for him. I'm not defending his things, but I'm saying, if I am a high court judge, can I really send my child to jail because he stole? It's not possible. Someone else has to fill that gap. So even in the case of ourselves, where we feel conflicted as publications, if MBC here fired someone unfairly, maybe MBC cannot really say that because it involves them. That is when the Namibian Sons of this world and others must step in and say, oh, we heard there's something happening at MBC, but MBC colleagues are in a tight situation. Can we fill that gap? Essentially, that is how I look at it.
In pursuit of the truth and in fairness.
That's it.
Of course.
Yes.
Moving over to what is expected to happen between 29 April and 3 May 2021 in the Namibian capital. What can we expect?
I think what we expect is wisdom, is a reflection on the journey of the past 30 years, to say Windhoek Declaration, yes, World Press Freedom Day being declared at the United Nations General Assembly, yes, but what have we achieved? What have they led to? Those events. What are we living according to the ethos that we agreed, the principles of these decisions? What is it? What are the loose ends that must still be tightened to even make things better? What are the successes that we must consolidate for future successes? So essentially, that is a reflection, but also a platform to chart a new path going forward. 30 years from now, again, we must converge somewhere else, Brazil or Ukraine or wherever, and say, where are we now since the Windhoek, the last congregation in Windhoek in 2021, stuff like that.
Speaking about those loose ends, from your chambers, which are the key loose ends that we as a profession need to accept responsibility for and that we need to implement corrective or remedial action?
Yeah, so Denver, you spoke earlier about, subjectivity and objectivity, and as much as we are subjective beings as human beings, we are also professionals, and we have to say we have to be very, very honest to ourselves first before anyone else. And but professionalism for me is what cuts it. So there are pockets of events where you look at it and say, but how was this story done? You know, what is it trying to achieve? Why are we, you know, so there's so much that we must do ourselves, because we always look the other way and say, oh, they are not doing well. They are not doing well. Government this, officials this, public officials this. But ourselves, when do we ever actually look at ourselves and say, no, but comrades, colleagues, let's look at ourselves also and do that. Once you have that self-criticism, that introspection, it helps you professionally to look at things more objectively and more professionally. But the loose ends in general are those of course, introspection, but also there are many things that we must strive for, the passing of the access to information law and other things. Because I was saying yesterday to the Commonwealth meeting to say, why are we number one in Africa in terms of press freedom, but we are only 23rd in the world? Is it because our standards in Africa of press freedom are so low that even the least independent, if you like, can be ranked higher? Why can't we be in the top 10, for example? What is it that we need to do more to actually improve our global ranking?
Notwithstanding the merits and demerits about our global ranking, why do you think we are indeed number one on the African continent? What can you attribute that success to?
Yeah, so I think a variety of events led to that. So I think symbolically, the 1991 seminar by UNESCO that birthed the Windhoek Declaration was key. It puts some sort of subconscious moral expectation on government to say, you are the birth country of this campaign, and therefore you can't just do it any other way. You have to do it that way. And then, of course, once we tasted our first number one spot in this regard, I think it created even more hunger to retain that space. And therefore, everything that we've done since then is somewhat geared towards maintaining that, which is it's a good thing to say. It's a good thing for our president, our prime minister, and everybody to say, look, we are coming from Namibia. We are number one in Africa in terms of press freedom. What are you talking about? You know, breaking like that. It's a good thing. So that hunger to retain that spot and just to make sure that you can really, it's a good PR for our democracy and everything. So I think that has helped a bit to retain that.
Tying in with that, why then is the proposed legislation relating to access to information such a big deal when in the absence of that statute we are doing this well?
Yeah, maybe it goes back to the point that I made earlier to say maybe it can help us, it can propel us in the global rankings, for example. But it's a very critical question, and I've said it before to say that that legislation on paper means nothing. Countries like Zimbabwe and others have a similar legislation, but they are doing poorly in terms of these rankings. So the secret lies in implementation, not just in adoption. And therefore, we hope really that the spirit within which this law was being promulgated would actually live to see us living by the document itself, especially from a government side as a regulator of some sort. But we hope it could be a game changer in some ways. And I'm saying again that access to information is not just about the media. It's about individuals, public members going to a particular government office and say, look, I'm doing research or I'm doing whatever, or I'm curious about a particular thing. I think something's not right here. Can I have particular information? So hopefully it will be that kind of law.
As we wrap up, let's briefly juxtapose regulation versus self-regulation. We claim to be a self-regulating space. Are we managing that?
I think we are managing that. We wouldn't want to have it any other way. Remember the conversations a few years ago that we should be regulated. Who watches the watchdog and stuff like that, which is a legitimate question. But of course, the media industry fought back and said, look, we are capable of regulating ourselves. So leading to the creation of the Media Ombudsman's Office, where people go and lodge their complaints and their grievances. And there are a lot of processes, arbitration, reconciliation and whatnot, to try and reach consensus between media houses and the complainants. And only if there is failure in that regard that people can approach courts and whatnot. I think the fact that, that we have that platform for aggrieved members of the public to lodge their complaints is actually a very, very wonderful thing, because it didn't happen in the past. In the past, you could call back a newspaper and say, look, guys, I see my name in your paper. It's not correct, the information you're talking about me. Can you correct? And newspapers had a choice just to lay back and say, no, we're not going to do anything. We stick by our story.
Thank you.
But now there's a platform to rectify.
Before the director lodges a grievance against me for time management, your brief concluding remarks this morning, please.
Yeah, so May 3 is coming. From the 29th to the 3rd of May, the world converges on Windhoek physically and through virtual platforms to really reflect on the journey so far. We are very proud as Namibians of the Windhoek Declaration, that it has been a living document for the past 30 years and that the world are actually coming back here because of that document. So we hope that more solutions to the press industry will be hammered out during those 5 days.
Thank you, Nene.
Thank you, Nelbert.
Ewa. That was editor of Namibian Sun, Toivo Ndjebela, talking to us about World Press Freedom Day celebrations. He is of the conviction that information is indeed a public good. We'll be back after the brief break.